Welcome to the Awakening podcast, where we have truth tellers, not whistleblowers, where we have facts, not conspiracy theories, the podcast with solutions. You can find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. I'm also on BitChute as Awakening Podcast. I have the meditation podcast, the Learn Polish podcast, and the speaking podcast, and all can be found on freedombroadcasters.com. Today, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Romanian activists, Forbes Under 30 Europe. Please welcome Florin Badita.
Badita, yeah.
Badita.
Thanks, Roy. Thanks. And first, thanks for inviting me to the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. I've actually done a lot of research on what you're doing, and it's extremely impressive. So maybe you might just tell people who you are first in more detail.
Yeah, so I'm Florin Badita. I'm an activist, data geek, and a lot of different hats that I'm wearing. But mostly related, especially with the podcast, I founded in 2015. I founded a group called Corruption Kills, with the aim of showing that corruption actually kills. And I started this group after a night fire killed 65 people, including a friend of mine, in a night fire, because in this club, which had the official capacity of 80 people that were allowed, in that night there were over 400 people and only one exit, so a lot of people were not able to evacuate. And there were controls that were done before, but because of corruption and things like that, they were still allowed to function, and yeah, tragedy happened.
And is that what kind of started your whole kind of fighting against this? Or were you kind of awake before that and realized that there was something wrong?
So my first time when I kind of got awake was like a long time ago. Thinking it now, like in 2006, when I was probably like 16 or 17 years old, I was listening to rock music, like long hair and stuff like that. And our parliament decided to enact a law. They wanted to pass a law that would not allow me to wear like symbols that would offend the church. So it would become illegal to wear like a cross that was upside or other things like that, because the church would be offended. And for me, being like, I would not have been able to listen to some of the music that I loved because of that law. So for me, it was like, no, this is censorship. We just 17 years before we remove communism, to for what now? Almost getting into the EU, and we will start regressing back. No, I don't want that. So I searched online and identified that somebody was organizing a protest in front of the parliament, and I contacted them and I was like, hey, I want to help, tell me how I can help. And and eventually we were around 50 to 100 volunteers that we promoted this event, and we had 10 bands that played for free, and around 5,000 people that participated there. And this was a success because after that the parliament didn't push for that law. So this was my first kind of awakening moment. And after that, I was dormant for another 4 or 5 years. I didn't do anything with activism. I was like, okay, now I have a life. I'm young. I don't know, abusing different things, because this is what we do. We try different things, and yeah, we are young and careless. And in 2011, then I started also being on Twitter and other things like that, and there were the revolutions that were started to happening in Africa. There was a lot of dictatorship that were going down, and for me was like in a way frustrating that in Romania nothing was happening. And in 2011 I saw a friend, it wasn't yet a friend, I saw somebody that was like, hey, let's meet at in the city center and do some protests regarding what is happening in Romania with some of the things that are happening, and also to show solidarity with the people protesting in Tunisia and in other parts. And I participated in that protest and it was on the 10th of December, when is the International Day of Human Rights, and or 10th of January, some one of them. And the police come and they arrested all of us. They took us to the police station. They give us a fine, and then we were let go. And then half of the people come back again to the city center. And the only like the protest that we were doing was just we had like A4 papers, and it was written liberty. So every person has like an L or all of the words. So for this simple act, the police arrested us, and this was like, okay, we are living in democracy, but what is this? This is not that's not right. And after that, I started becoming more involved. In 2013, we had Russia, Montana, where our government wanted to allow a private corporation to destroy four historical mountains to extract gold from there. And that company was paying most of the television station in our country were on their payroll. So we were doing protests with like 20,000, 30,000 people, and the television were saying nothing. It was like, no, this doesn't exist. And unluckily for them, we had the internet, and eventually that project didn't happen because of the pressure that the people protesting on the street did.
Yeah, well, I think once people realize how corrupt the media are and just hiding everything, it's all over the world, and to witness this firsthand. When you were arrested, were they rough handling you, or were they okay when the police were arresting you during that time?
So in the beginning, like in 2011 and things like that, the police were kind of brutes. They were not. They were trying to put pressure, and especially because we didn't have that much cameras then. So if they would push you or they would give you something like that, then like, ah, no, we didn't, or stuff like that. So yeah, they were abusing their power. After some years, they started being less, or at least maybe with me, because I was more, I become more visible, so they didn't want to have all of the press on them or stuff like that. But with some of my friends, even like 2 3 years ago, they used force. In 2017, uh, we had some big protest, and then we had a lot of police that abused their rights. And then I think 2018, we had almost 300,000 people protesting against our government, and the government used water cannons and tear gas in civil population, spraying like almost the whole square, 200,000 people being sprayed, where we had children, we had old persons, and they were using tear gas, and yeah,
I don't
nobody.
think people realize the pressure from water cannons, because I saw that when they done it in Germany recently, people were seriously injured from the pressure from the water.
Exactly, yeah, it's like you cannot, you have to feel it to understand it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like we're seeing that around the world. There's something wrong when they're attacking peaceful protesters, and when there's people smashing shops, robbing shops, burning shops, there's nothing done to them. But yet, when you've people out there with their families, elderly, and they're getting tear gassed, rubber bullets, and that, I think that fuels people, because they're, deep down, no matter what people think, they go, this isn't right. They're not doing anything. They're just trying to stand up for their rights, what they believe in, and they're getting, bombarded. So there's one of the things that I really want to touch on today that I've looked at, and it's the freedom of information that you have been doing.
Yeah, I love the fire law.
So you might explain exactly what it is, because it's one thing today that I want people to understand and be able to do. So if you can tell people from the very start how we can get about this.
Sure. So I would first like start a little introduction about the FOIA law, the Freedom of Information Request Act, as it's called in some countries. In others, I think it's the Right to Know. India and probably some other ex-colonies of UK, they're calling it the Right to Know. But basically, this is a law that it didn't. It started more fairly recently, like I think in the 60s. around the 60s in the US, and then it kind of spread. Currently, around 120 countries around the world have this law, and this law is really magical because this kind of, in a way, levels the playing field between you and the government, because the government, and this can be like the parliament or the government or local institution and everything, they're kind of opaque. They don't share that much, at least in Romania, but in other parts.
All
And
over the world, from everywhere I've seen it.
or
Yeah.
yeah, probably. Unfortunately, we don't have that much transparency. But this laws allows you as a simple citizen to ask them different things, and this can be like usually a lot of the people that I was helping, they usually have a local problem. Like let's say you even have a curiosity or you want to know something maybe related to, I don't know, how many parking spaces are in your town, or if they are rented, or different things like that. And you can request almost everything if it's not a military secret and some other exceptions from the law. And you can ask public authorities about that. And currently I send over 8,000 of them to 3,000 public institutions. I also developed a methodology that allows us to transform the FOIA law kind of into an API. So we can use it as an API to request from multiple cities, and then to identify based on the average sum that you will get.
And what do you
Uh,
mean by API so that people understand?
Okay, so yeah, sure. So an API is basically currently, like, you send a request, you will get reply back. Like these are actual replies from different institutions that replied when I say to them like, hey, I want the answer by email. So and this is what they understand by email. They are still sending like written letters. But coming back to your question of using it as an API, I'm instead of you will craft an Act FOIA request, an anti-corruption toolkit for Freedom of Information Request Act request, which is a FOIA, a simple FOIA request, but you use a template. And can I share my screen? Oh,
Yes, yeah,
if
yeah,
if it's
yeah.
also video, because usually I'm
Exactly, yeah.
expressing,
And yeah, just those, I mean,
but you will need to make me a host.
yeah, yeah, one sec there now. Yeah. And just those for that are listening, I'll have the links of the video channel so that you'll be able to come in and look at this. And just as that's opening up, because I've looked at different ones, and you've done the one for the Christmas lights as well.
Yeah, this was one of the Act FOIA.
And are you allowed to send them by email, or is everything by registered letter?
So at least in Romania and most probably in the EU, you are allowed to send them by email. But I think most of the countries allows you to send by email now, at least. But I have limited experience. Like my experience is with Romania. I know people doing it in India, which they can also send by email. And Slovakia was knowing, and Portugal, and some US, of course, you can send. But I'm guessing that most of them they allow you to send by email. And, uh, so what I'm referring with, like the one of the Act FOIA requests that I sent was for removing the snow, and you send the same question uh, to multiple cities, and each city will give you an answer. Like for example, 900 something, and you will get multiple answers. And based on all of the answers, so if we ask like 300 cities in a country, and let's say we have 100 responses, we ask like, okay, what's the cost per kilometer for removing the snow? And we want to have the same thing that we compare. So if we compare 1 kilometer in one city, we want to compare with 1 kilometer in another city. or we compare by, I know, the number of persons living in that city. So something that we can compare, so we can say like, okay, this city compared to others, taking everything is the same. These are some of the differences, and we have this, and we get the average price, like what's the average price paid for this specific thing, and then we can identify which are the local authorities that are paying much less than this. So these are kind of like some good practices, and we also identify if in 200 cities that we ask, or 100 cities that we ask, we get an average price of 400 for 1 kilometer of removing the snow. Then we identify local authorities where the average price, or the price for that city is 2,000 or 5,000 euro. This is like 10 times more than the average. And this is usually when corruption happens. So I did it with the Christmas lighting, and I was asking about, and I think I can stop currently sharing. Uh, like, I don't know if I should go more into the technical details of how to send a FOIA request, or
Well, what we can do is
probably.
maybe, yeah, we can give links later so that
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
and if you want to
exactly.
share the forms and everything so that they can do it. But like getting onto the Christmas tree lights, because like not everybody responded. Are they legally obliged that they should respond?
So that's the problem in a way, because this is a country by country. So for each country, you will have different regulations. But from what I observed, usually is into the responsibility of the person sending to do a follow up. So in my case, I had, for the Christmas lights, I had around 100. So I had 42%, I think, response rate. So 2 out of 3 cities that I asked, they never replied back, and I should have like go and put and go in court with almost 200 cities, which I didn't do because I didn't have a lawyer to help me to set up everything to do, and there are some costs involved there also. So I didn't do it, and the legislation in Romania is really actually very lax, in the sense that there is almost nothing that that person will happen to them if they don't reply directly. You can first, and one of the stupidities that the first thing that you can do, you can write an administrative complaint to the director of the institution, and 95% of the time the director of the institution is the one that is mostly put in political, because of some political ties there, so not based on competency. And that the director will be the one that he will not want to share this information. So your first step is like, yeah, complain to him, and he will be like, okay, I don't care. And the other step will be then to go in a legal battle, and in 1 or 2 years you probably win, and then you have your data. And for them it's okay, because usually for them it's like, okay, even if 2 years, in 2 years we have much more time to steal. So if they don't get the data now, and they will get it in 2 years, in 2 years we will finish our mandate, we will probably not be re-elected, and I don't know, probably we can skip the country or stuff like that. So if somebody else, yeah, and some of the people, especially people, they are like really short time focused, they are not focused on the long run that much. So for them it's like, yeah, 2 years when I can steal 200,000 every year is much better than I would earn from the minimum salary, or from, like, I don't know what kind of salary they would have in other places.
And do you have like a duration? Because anytime I get something from the city, they tell me I must respond within 7 days, or it's just considered. Are you allowed to do the exact same thing to them, where you say I need this information by X amount of days?
So the legislation is pretty clear here. Usually, if they will give you a negative response, they should reply in less than 5 days, and say like, "Hey, we cannot do this. We cannot answer to this because you ask something that is military secret or whatever." After that, if the request is complex and it will take more than 10 days, they will need to reply before these 10 days to say like, hey, because of your request and how complicated it is, you will get a response in 30 days, and this is the maximum. So in 30 days, everything that you send should get a response back. In reality, I have requests where I got answers after 2 months, which theoretically is not even legal yet because they should have already answered. And now with COVID, but now okay, I understand it's COVID and things like that. I had some, and it's interesting. One of the requests that I'm doing now, I want to create a map with a database that not even the local authorities have. And the aim is to ask all of the cities in Romania at start, and then all of the ministries and all the local authorities, to ask them the list with all of the buildings and all of the plots of land that the local authority, that city or town or village own. So all of the places that they own, and if they rent it to somebody else, to whom and for how much money and for what time period. So in this sense, we can have a list of all of the public, like all of the publicly owned land, and if they are renting it or if they are offering for fee or things like that to political parties, to churches, to private corporations, at least we will have a public view of all of this. Like currently, nobody has this. Probably the IRS, like the Romanian IRS, they kind of know this because of the taxes paid, but they don't publish anything. So this will be kind of the first publicly available map of the all of the places owned by the local authorities.
Okay, very interesting. And have you, with the different things, like for example, when you've done the Christmas tree lights, or because you've done a lot, I've seen it on the website. But just say, for instance, the Christmas tree lights, and you could see it was, I think, per inhabitant, it was X amount, and you had
Yeah.
ones that could be like 3 or 4 times. Does the press ever get involved and kind of go, "Hey, there's something wrong here"? Did you ever get support from the press?
So for some of this, like with the Christmas lighting and others, I had interest, especially from the. I didn't get unfortunately that much interest in the, like national press, but I found interest in the local press. It's like especially for the cities that I was kind of putting them that I got replies, they started writing about it because like, hey, our city is like seventh out of 105 cities most expensive or things like that. So that kind of become a thing in its own. I think also one of the things that maybe I should have done better, it would have been, but I didn't have any money then and things like that to organize like a press conference. I should have like organized a press conference and invite the press and probably do something like a better report where I would explain some of the findings, and that would hopefully generated more outcome. And in a way, why did I stop it short? I started doing this after the collective, and I did it for like half a year. And I sent a list of proposals to the government. That was a technocrat government. That was for 1 year. And I suggested to them like, hey, this is what I did. This is the request that I sent with the Christmas decoration, with the removing the snow and others. Instead of me spending 6 months doing all of these searches, let's modify the law and and oblige the local authorities to send this information directly to the government, because each local authority has this data. They also communicate with the government directly. Let's create a feed where this data would be passed directly and sent to the local government, and the local government they can publish it on their open data portal, open the yeah, they could like a lot of the countries, like 50, 60 countries I think until now, they are part of the open and sorry for digressing a little.
No, no, it's
they are,
all, yeah, it's relevant. Yeah.
they are open to the Open Government Partnership, OGP, which is a coalition I think started by the US, and more countries are participating, where local authorities and government, they're releasing open data sets that can be used for free for businesses, for NGOs, for other people interested. So yeah, so they could have put the data there or something like that. But speaking, having a meeting with some people from the government, they told me like, no, we cannot do this, and we have just a technocrat government. We have a 1 year mandate before the election will be organized, and we cannot help you. And yeah, and that I was like, okay, fuck. So because one of my aims with sending this was like, hey, this is possible. This kind of information are possibles. With this kind of information, we will reduce corruptions, because local authorities will know that they're kind of monitored, and they will be compared by the people, because this information will be public. Because a lot of the times they steal money in different ways, because they don't expect people to check. uh, I was looking at some of the cities that I send requests, and usually they are numbered. So you have like 001, 002, and you get a number of the request. And there were cities they had like 30,000 people or 40,000 people, and I was sending them a request in December, and the number was like 007. So they only get like 7 requests all that year. So there is a lot of information that they can hide about, like, I don't know how many cars do they have and they travel with, and maybe they are abusing that. How much they're paying to remove the some benches in the park and put others, or removing the roads and rebuilding the roads and other things like that. And if we don't check as citizens, then they will be like, they will nothing will happen to them.
Yeah, and I don't think people kind of realize how a lot of this corruption is done. So, for example, if there's a construction contract that's required, they get their brother that owns the company that charges triple. It doesn't go to a public tender to get the best price for the city. And like services as well, and catering, it is just rampant from what I have seen. So, like, I'm wondering what's the actual best way, because you're basically trying to approach the government saying, hey, they're bad boys, but they're all in it together. Like even the court
Yeah.
system. I mean, I've had 100 court cases, even recently, a ruling where the court said that the tenant should pay like about 8% of what the rent should be. And that they couldn't for 4 years, the last 4 years, they didn't need to pay that just because it's the city's problem for tenants that don't pay. So now they've left it on me and I'm guilty. And another thing, and I'm just curious, when I start fighting the city um, about rents that they're supposed to pay me, I'll just give you a quick
Yeah.
explanation, and so that for the listeners as well. Well, myself and another guy, we had tenement houses, and the tenants, not all of them, a lot of them didn't pay. So like the city then is supposed to find, you have to go through the eviction process, and if the city doesn't have a place for them, then the city's supposed to pay you the rent. They don't, so then you have to sue the city. And when you start suing the city, they just attack you from every single direction. Technical inspectors, like the cleaning police and all this. And I was just bombarded from attacks. And like we had court cases where tenants weren't paying us and we were losing. So it was actually costing me money to go through the process to get paid for rent that we were legally entitled to get. And the city is like, no, it's your problem. And if we wanted to move them, we had to provide accommodation equal or better. And the tenant could say, no, I don't like that. So like, yeah. And then I see court cases with the judges, and I lost the plot a few times. I just started screaming at the judge. I say, yes, Sarah, how could, and they just put their head down. They know it's corrupt, but they don't care. So that's what frustrates me so much. Like, and I mean, you obviously seen this as well. Like, you're fighting a system, like local authorities, they're in bed with the government. They're all in cahoots together. They're giving a percentage to them as well. So like, how can we actually change this? Because I'm inspired by what you've been doing. It's very impressive with the different ones, the information that you've been getting. And have you actually got a team of people that's doing that for, say, the Christmas lights? Because that's a lot of work, sending out all these different to different authorities and just tracking it as well.
Yeah, no, it would have been nice to have a team. With this, I almost did 90% myself. I had help with some of the processing, because some of the responses are coming like PDFs and things like that. So I needed, and some of them was like handwritten. So I needed volunteers to like, okay, look at the handwritten and help it translated in something that the computer can understand. But this is why like it took 6 months for that to do. And some of the things that I kind of and this is like also I kind of optimize already because I'm like sending a template directly to them. So even if they will reply back, they will reply back using my template. So even if it's like a PDF, at least the images will have kind of the same structure. So that still helps a little with what I'm doing. So I'm kind of optimizing with some of the things. Basically, it can be still automatized more, but I need like some financing. I need around, I don't know, $50,000 or something to be able to create an app that would allow us to. Oh, I was looking at some of the answers if I have a template to show, but not all of them are
Yeah,
positive.
sure. What you can do maybe is even send me, and we can put it on the links or the description. But like, are most of the time, like you have a template? So, like with a template, are you actually writing mostly the same thing, but just changing, yeah, for Christmas lights? Or are you constantly realizing, okay, I can get additional information rather than just say how many lights? Are you allowed to ask like 10 different questions on one F4
Yes,
freedom
you
of information?
can, but the problem is when you send too much from on one single request, is that they will answers to like they will give answers to like six of them, and then they will kind of forget or they will not write to the seven, and maybe the seven was the most important one that you wanted. So that's the risk when you are asking like, hey, give me this and this and this and this, that you will get some of the answers, but you will not get all of it, and then you will complain like, hey, we didn't give you an answer. No, actually, I give you an answer. Look, this is an answer. Yeah, but you didn't reply to that, so it's a lot of he said, you said kind of
And
thing.
when you're,
So
it's different if you're dealing with one, but if you have got so many different local authorities that you're dealing with, that's a lot of correspondence, and just trying to have a system in place that you don't actually,
yeah,
let some.
usually like what I'm doing, I'm using Google spreadsheet. I have templates in Google spreadsheet where like I have the list of the emails that I want to send, and when I'm sending a batch of emails, then I will check it there, so I don't I know how to not to send again to them. And after that I have some columns where I'm sending like, okay, on what date did I send the request? Okay, on 10 of February. Perfect. So they have 30 days to reply, so I know like, okay, they have less than 10 days, things like that. And for some of the local authorities, I would call them and be like, hey, I sent an email 20 days ago, can you please check and give me a number, because they are obliged to give you this number, because if I don't have this number, this is pointless in a way, because that number is how you know like, okay, this is my request. And also when you will go in court with them, you can already say like, hey, this is the official request that I got from them with the number 20 from like 14th of February 2021. So from that day, when I know that I have the 30 days running, when which is the maximum date until then, until when they have to give an reply.
I know that in Ireland recently, one of the, like, we don't have many good journalists, but one that they done the Freedom of Information Act to the Health Authority, asking them about, are you able to isolate the COVID? And they got the response saying no, which basically proves that all the lies that are going around. So, like, like we can look at this on, like, obviously the Christmas trees, construction sites, the renting is very, there's so many different things that are extremely important, but there's other ones as well, like, that it's just like that, the one-off. Have you done ones like that, that it's more of a specific to the government, that rather than the whole local authorities? Have you ever done any ones like that?
Say again, like which kind of.
Like this lady wrote to about, for the health authority, about asking about the I don't know, does it go through the Irish government, or does it go to the health authority? Probably the government, I'm assuming. But she got the response with the letter, and she, we were all sharing it because it was important. But just wondering, have you done ones that are kind of one specific, as opposed to when you're reaching, you have to go to all
Yeah,
the local authorities?
First, how do FOIA requests usually in most of the countries? So you as a citizen probably you don't know like that that specific city or that specific ministry has like 25 departments. You will not know which department is. So usually you send the request, you give it to like to the secretary, or you find like a place to send an email, and in that city that will receive the email, they should identify like, okay, this is about urban planning, so we will send to the planning commission to give an answer, or this is regarding taxes, so we will send to things like that. So your email or your request should flow, the public authority should move it. So if you are sending to the government but you're actually asking like the ministry or something, they should forward it to to the relevant actor. So this is just first. And yeah, I send different requests that were specific. For example, we had our old mayor from Bucharest, which was kind of a corrupt person. She did one of the most stupidest things, without kind of announcing people that much, and without planning. She decided to move one of the biggest arteries that a lot of cars were coming there, to move it, and to create one lane for public buses, which, yeah, of course this is really good, like exclusive public buses, but they only did it for like a small portions of like 500 meters or 1 kilometer or something like that, which didn't make that much sense. And it created a lot of bad traffic there. People who didn't have where to leave their cars, so okay, I would want to take that bus, but I don't have to leave where to leave the car. So it was a lot of yeah, it didn't make sense. And I sent like a request asking them like, I want to know like how many, because and also, so cars couldn't pass into that road. They put a lot of small cones on the road. And I sent the request asking like, okay, how many cones were putted, what's the cost of them, what's the company that added them, and also I don't know, some different things that I asked. But this was like a really, really specific question, and I got the answer. And actually the cost wasn't that much, so it was like 10,000 euros for all of them, which it isn't something inflated probably for what they used. So probably it was more of stupidity of why they did that, and it kind of backfired on them. But yeah, so at least was like, this was my personal curiosity. Okay, did they do that because of corruption or not? How could I find out? Somebody paid for creating this. So let's find out who what company did that. And we did it like, I think I have like 20, 30, 40 requests that were more specific and not tailored to all of the public authorities. Most of them are when other people approach me like, hey, I know you sent a lot of FOIA requests, I also want to send a request, but I don't know how to start. And then, okay, I will start asking them like, okay, what are you trying to figure out, so things like that, so we can identify, okay, if you want this and this will probably be the Ministry of Education or different ministries, based on what they need to find out.
And like, so with the freedom of information, you've mentioned, obviously, you know about Romania, but for those, because like this podcast, I think is, last I looked, it was like 93 countries. So it's kind of, and it's big in America as well. How do people actually check it? Like, first of all, with America, is that done per state? Because America seems to be like, it's like Europe, really. It's not like, one country. Each state seems to have their own laws. So must they, is that the way it's currently under America?
So in America is federal, from what I understand. So like each state, yeah, have their own laws. So some will have guns, some will not have, some will have legal weed and other things like that. So yeah, they are kind of, in a way, their own state, their own country-ish, for some of the things that they can decide, and for others, they is at the
But regarding
national.
like the freedom of information, do you know what way does it work under local law or is it federal law?
Uh, so FOIA theoretically you can request to all of them. So I'm not sure if they're different. I will share a little the screen and I will kind of share my thought process of how I would go about it. Uh, so I would kind of start searching if to see because the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, uh, is like national, but not sure if like some of the things could differ. For example, they can request a small cost if you need to like if they need to do like a Xerox of something to do some copies to you.
Mm. Okay.
The FOIA
And
doesn't apply to the Congress, the courts, or the central offices of the White House. Nor does it apply to records in the custody of state or local governments. All state governments have their own FOIA type status.
okay. So basically, and for people that are in other countries, they just do the same. They'll go on and do a search and just check their country and to see that that it is available.
Yeah, and I will search. There were like 2, 3 really good websites which have kind of centralized informations uh, for different countries, like about how is the law implemented, what you can ask, and different things like that. Right to know, I think, was one of them. Or actionable, updated list, blah blah. I will search for the websites because there are some good websites that they like. I know I was using the two of them for when I was doing some of my trainings about FOIA because I had like people. I last year I was a speaker for in Mexico, so I was okay. What Mexico has, and actually Mexico is a really good example. Mexico FOIA. Oh, they have a website. Okay, let me see here. No, so ACA, the anti-corruption. There is a. This is also like if you want a good conference, the Academia contra la Corrupción, the Academy against corruption in Americas. ACA. I was a speaker there last year or 2 years ago. And doing my research, I discovered that they have a national platform of transparency, the PNT they call it, and this is like marvelous. I'm like dreaming to have this in Romania or somewhere around the world, because look at this is like perfect. So we have uh, identify what public informations are already available, and then you can choose like, okay, this is a state or a federation, what institution. So this would be the institution. uh, Maybe full screen. Okay, this is half full screen, enter full screen. Can you still see?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you can search like, okay, for each year, and then you can have like, okay, different statistics, the organizational structure, everything, and you don't need to care that much. You just need to select what public institution you want, and you have the informations like the official gazette, which is like where all of the different laws that are passed at the state of the federational layer, the minutes, all of the meeting minutes are published here. If they offer scholarships, if loans and debts, the patrimonial status of the different objects that they have, everything they have it here. Almost everything. They have some errors, but but yeah, this is like really really nice. And I didn't see that in Romania we don't have. And also, if okay, you first go there, you identify, because yeah, I kind of forgot to tell that like some of the information you will probably already find, but if you don't find, then yeah, you need to request. this information. And in this sense, for in this website for Mexico, you just select the public institution that you want to ask, and you are not limited to one. You can choose, I think, 33 institution, and then you put your request that you want. You help them, like if you have something to facilitate different things, like I'm interested just in events happened in the 2 and 3rd of February or whatever you want. You help them filter, or how do you want to receive updates, if you have some attachment, if you want it online or you want it blah blah. But yeah, this is like really really perfect. And I think this is a model that, or the we should tell to our and we should yeah, we should tell to our elected officials about this platform and ask them why we don't have it, like, or why we don't have something like this. If you don't have, maybe you're lucky and maybe you're living in some country that you already have. And there is also, like I was saying, the open government partnership, the OGP, and this is 78 countries already participate in that. And basically with this they're promoting like open government and sharing of data. So if you want to search different information, I will start here. So if you have US OGP data US, let's say they have a directory, open government data.gov, probably as this. Usually it's like data.gov or for each country data. And we have almost 200,000 data sets. So for this, like, because first, before you can send the FOIA for different things, especially if you want information for like the different parts, like I was doing for like all of the countries, cities or things like that, start with this, like, okay, what's already here, what's already existing, and you can filter based on like federal or city or some universities or governments or which organizations are publishing this. And you can find a lot of things based on what you need, starting with these data sets. And after that, yeah, if not, if you don't find, then send a request to and find your data there.
No, brilliant. Just wondering, is it possible? Because I know that, you're big into the, Google spreadsheets, and I know that you've shared a lot of them as well, because I was able to find some of the ones that you have done, and it's impressive, just all the details that you've given. But perhaps maybe because, with all the listeners around the world, maybe people might set up for their respective country, and we could create like a Google dump for each country, and how they can the right websites, and maybe the forms as well, that we could have a template, and then perhaps what they've actually done, because the last thing you need is 500 people doing the exact same thing. It's better to that they concentrate on different ones. And the other thing is, like, I'm looking at kind of obviously solutions, because it's great getting this information, but going through, as you mentioned, the slow process of the courts. I think it's name and shame does a lot better. So, like, if we can reach influencers, have a circle of influencers, between bloggers, podcasters, and all these different people, with huge followings on Instagram and YouTube, that they
Yeah,
could then, like, when you give them the information, hey, look at this doesn't add up. The average price is like, $10, and they're charging 100. You know that there's corruption going on. And by everybody getting on board, the press then can't ignore it, because people will listen to the influencer rather than you trying to spend so much time. So, like, even if we can do that and get the same kind of people together that are on board for this.
right. uh, Totally agree, like, and unfortunately, at least my personal experience with influencers didn't go that much. Like, we have some people that are kind of interested in helping us, but most of the influencers, at least in Romania and Eastern Europe, they didn't kind of participated that much, because some of them will be like, ah, no, we don't do politics and things like that, which is stupid. Everything is politics, and you should accept that, and you should play your part. And some of them are not getting involved because they have like records with like cat music or some different music label that kind of can sever their contract with them if they get engaged in political actions or things like that. Which, yeah, but this was mostly without protest. With the FOIA, maybe there will be more open because this is not directly attacking the government or of overthrowing it. So yeah, maybe with the FOIA we can have some better requests. I wanted to share also like macroc.com. This is a website where you can kind of, this is kind of going into that way of like sending a request around, but from what I know this is only US and I'm not sure. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is just for the US, which will help you like, okay, you want to send a FOIA request, and basically this is kind of helping you instead of, okay, I need to search the office of the mayor and see which is the email and send that email and stuff like that. You can use it, you can send via macroc. And here one advantage is that also if you will get a response, the response will be publicly available, because even now like a lot of public authorities are getting questions, are answering questions, and sometimes they will answer 300 times to the same question to 300 people, different people, instead of publishing somewhere it so everybody can find it and we don't need to ask it again. And macro kind of does that, so at least they're making the information public. And I spoken with them like, hey, can we kind of adapt macro to allow for act FOIA request and to allow to create to fork it to make it something more globally. And currently, or at least when I spoke with them, it was kind of out of scope what I wanted to do. So in the future for the act FOIA and for what I'm doing with like allowing, because my vision is the same as you're saying, like I would be able to send a request and I will have an answer in Bucharest, let's say in the capital of Romania. Then somebody else can send the same request using a website where they would just need to say like, okay, I'm living in Paris, I want to send the same request for the Christmas lights or whatever to my city. They would send the request to Paris, and then somebody else will send the same request in Nigeria, other will send it in South America. And then when we will get the responses, we will be able to compare like, okay, Nigeria is paying 3 times more than Paris, which will be a news in itself if we will have this kind of data. Which like, wow, okay, so what's much more, how can it be much more expensive in Niger compared to Paris or different things like that. But, uh, a city. I'm trying to think of it.
No, 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 but
Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because sometimes they'll be able to justify it and it'll be very hard to prove. But when you're looking, especially in European countries as well, because you can look at the average income and different things and go, hey, this isn't adding up. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. No, brilliant.
And because a lot of the times people don't know exactly what to request, because like even for me I started writing, I have a list with around 100 suggestions of what I could request. And these are based also like also on MarkRock or other websites that they are collecting requests that were sent, or others were my own ideas of different things that I didn't find them available. So this would, in this sense, like Macroc and others are really good if you kind of know what you want to send. Like I have a specific request and I want to send it, and this will help us. But you will find a lot of people, and especially like I'm imagining like influencer or others that would suggest to people instead of like, because a lot of people are lazy, and I know I'm also lazy. Like if I can find a website where I can do something in less than 5 minutes, and I know this will contribute to something, I will do it. So in this sense, you could have like, okay, pick one of the 10 different Act FOIA requests. One will be with the, let's say, the Christmas decoration. Other will be like, I don't know, pollution factors in your country, or water quality, or different things that it could be that you don't have already available data. And you could select, okay, I want to send this request to the city where I am, or to three cities or things like that. And by having this, and then the user will just get an email back in 30 days or something like that, which if we send it using our own kind of from the website directly, then the user doesn't need to be that involved. Like he will get a ping, but we already get the information back from the government, and we just process the template, because we will send the template and we just process the template, and kind of the user doesn't need to do almost nothing. He just need to be kind of the legal person that is sending the request, so we don't kind of abuse ourselves and send like 1 million requests to all of the cities in the world. No,
Exactly.
these are actually a person living in California or living in the US that send 10 requests in other parts of the US, because you are allowed to ask in other parts of your country, and sometimes you are allowed to ask also in other countries. But this depends. Like usually, the best approach is to be from that country that you're sending. At least what this is what I observed. If you are a journalist, then of course it's maybe more flex in sending in other parts. But I don't know.
Well, I just hope that the journalists start becoming journalists instead of actually, just regurgitating the lies that they've been told around the world. And that's why I think the people need to become, the journalists. And what I would love to see, because we've set up the Freedom Broadcasters, and we're kind of, we're adding people now in different systems, and like our purpose is we're not happy with the way mainstream is. We're not happy with the censorship, and I think something like that. So we could add this to it with all the different links and everything, and just get different people involved. So whoever wants to reach out, let's create something. Because I always say that if something doesn't exist, let's create it. Because if it's going to help humanity, like that's what we all want. We can't be like a lot of people are kind of going, oh, is it Trump? Is it Biden? Is it this? Is it that? Hoping someone else. Hope isn't the strategy. If we want to make change in the world, it's by doing things like this. And I think, like, I know that a lot of the influencers, they don't want to do it, but I have seen a few. I'm watching some. There's people coming out exposing. So that's all you need, because at the end of the day, more people will start following them, and the others will lose their support if they're tiptoeing and just trying to be, do comply with what society wants them to do. Like, I believe we can actually make a huge change. So what I would love is, one, if you can, be giving me the different links, that I can include in the podcast description. And
Yeah.
but like, I would love to get you, if you're interested, get you on the Freedom Broadcasters, that we can actually do this, because this is something that I believe will change the world. Because when I saw it, and I've seen other people doing it as well, but like you have, it's amazing what you have been doing, and the fact that you've been doing most of this yourself, at your own costs. It's incredible, like I don't know, do you have a donation page or something like that? But I think,
I had like a Patreon page where currently because 2 years ago we started something called the Activist House. Uh, I don't remember the link, but I will send it. We started the Activist House, where we were doing trainings and workshops to teach people. And in the first year of activity, we had around 5,000 people coming to that house and participating in some of the events that we were doing. But now with the pandemic, we stop it, and currently we are just doing some of the parts online.
okay. Okay. No, perfect. So yeah, I mean, like, we'll get as much information to people, because like, we'll give them the templates, give them different examples of ones that you've done. So how can people get in contact with you, Florin?
So the best way, me without the Florin Badita. Wait. Like this is really good. Like I don't know if you know about that. This is a website that allows you to put a lot of profiles. So this is like a good because if you search like, I don't know, about me, Florin Badita, then you can find like, okay, this is the Facebook, the GitHub, the Medium, the LinkedIn, the Twitter, Quora. I love Quora. I love spending time there and feeding other people, Angel List. So this would be one of the things. And of course, email. Like my email is badisaflorina@gmail.com, and I will also send it to you.
No.
Oh, and yeah, here you like usually I'm active
No,
on Medium.
I mean, just those for listening. I mean, that's an impressive, the about me page. So we'll have all the links for that, so you can, I mean, basically one page with all the social media links. It's ideal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like perfect one click, and you don't have uh yeah to go in other places.
Or have all the links written down. It's so much better with the actual buttons showing, the LinkedIn or the Facebook. So yeah, ideal.
Yeah, like one of my far-fetched idea in the future is related with the Live API to because currently a lot of our data is it's in a way it's not yet our data. So like even here, my data is on this website about that me, and I put some of the data and I have it on Facebook in other parts like that. But I would see a future where we will have like a Live API that would it would be a kind of above like Facebook or Instagram or other websites, and this would come like in my vision with like legislation where if you have a social media website that has at least like 5 to 10 million users, you should allow for people to be able to export their post or messages or the things like that to other services and export it in real time kind of. And with this live API, the idea would be for me, like when I'm doing some posts on Facebook or other parts like that, all of them to kind of also some of them that I select to go to that live API. So in the future, if I close my Facebook or things like that, I still have all of my posts saved there. And at the end of the life, when I'm will die, I can choose to like, okay, this will become public. This will I will hide them or things like that. And you could also answer to questions like, okay, what's your favorite books or what's your I don't know different preferences or things like that. And to be kind of abstracted of all of the different social medias and just to be about you and your persona in different places centralized into one place. That would be
'Cause,
like a
no, that makes sense.
Wikipedia.
Because yeah, now it's extremely hard to even download your contacts and everything. They make it so difficult. So yeah, that makes sense to have the ability to do that.
Yeah,
No, listen, it's been fantastic. We've all the details. They'll be all in the podcast description. Those that are listening, I'd encourage you just to kind of go on and look at the video. You can just check the time if there's a certain area that you're interested in something, and look at the websites that he's been shown. But we'll have all the links in the description. So, Florin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, and I love what you're doing. Keep the fight up.
thank you very much.
So that's all for the Awakening Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. We're on BitChute as Awakening Podcast. Until next week, take care.